Hi, everyone. Welcome back. What session are we on, Terry?
21.
Okay, session 21. Thanks for sticking with us. Let's dive in.
All right. After a couple of sidebars, the Mahachohan letter 2 sessions ago, and then last session, a totally different type of letter communication, which was a series of communications regarding cosmological notes, how the cosmos came into being, the Big Bang, the whole process of coming alive again after a long period of repose. And although it's interesting, it's pretty difficult to grasp if it's something that's new for you, but at least it's an introduction. So now we're getting back to the whole regular sequence. We're on letter number 31. So just to recap a little bit about what happened in the previous letters. Oh, one more thing too. Just before KH went into his 90-day retreat called Tsongkhapa, he was very discouraged. Remember, the 2 Englishmen had gotten HPB riled up because they kept poking her and getting her unsettled. And KH was getting pretty frustrated with them, and specifically with Hume. And he lectured them. He told them how, in essence, they were being cruel to her. And at the end of this, giving them a talking to about their comportment towards her, he said, he ended his letter with the word bus. And we were trying to figure out where that came from. Was it like basta in Italian or what? Well, Paul's mom came up with the answer. Normally, it's Moria that uses Arabic terms, but in this situation, it was KH who used an Arabic word, bus, which means exactly that: stop, enough. It's a conversation-stopping term. All right, enough of that. And she, being born in Syria, knows Arabic. She speaks it fluently, and quite often when she calls her relatives in Syria. So she immediately knew the term when she heard it. And that's what it means, enough already. So thank you, Amal, for your paying attention. And she, by the way, is one of our biggest fans and biggest support.
She watches
members.
every one of these.
Yes. All right. So Moria had been talking to the 2 Englishmen about some problems that were going on. And remember, all of the newspapers, both in India and in London, in England, had picked up on a couple of different things. Well, it was specifically triggered by the book that Sinnett wrote, The Occult World. And the spiritualists, of course, were all had their feathers up and their hackles up, and they were not happy at all with how they were portrayed in the communications with the Mahatmas. And then the other problem was Sinnett's friend, Stanton Moses. And remember the letter where KH was telling him information about Stanton Moses and his problems as a medium, that they had tried to use him as a conduit and he failed because he just could not grasp the difference between an inspired, highly evolved adept and an astral spirit guide. He could not tell the difference. And so Sinnett, unfortunately, revealed way too much to him. And that really made him angry. So he's setting the stage now for his payback. And before long, his goal is going to be to take down the TS.
Stanton Moses' goal.
Yes,
Oh, my
he's
goodness.
very, very angry.
Oh my goodness.
And we'll see. He's already setting the stage for an organization in London to gather some Confederates, people who are not happy with these communications and who disagree with them. So all of these forces are coming out due specifically to the book and to the revelations of towards Stanton Moses. And now they're trying to put out the fires, and it's already gotten to be a 5-alarm fire, and it's not going to be easy to contain. So, and then on top of that, they've got other problems. They sent HPB, or Moria sent her on a tour of North India. She was complaining. She said, I can't afford all of the expenses of the going here and going there. And he sends me one place, and then the next thing I know, he sends me something somewhere else. And one thing that we have to keep in mind is that this is how the Mahatmas work. They're very secretive. Even with their most cherished chelas, they don't reveal a whole lot to them. They will give them a few steps ahead, and that's it. They don't very often give them an outline for a long period of time. They're watching to see whether or not they're going to pick up on some little clues. They're constantly being tested. It's not just a short period. It is for lifetimes that people are tested. And then he's got two babus in Allahabad who are asking, oh, we want to get in touch with the masters too. Come on, can you put us in touch? We have questions about Hinduism, about the Shastras. We need to get answers to our own religious questions here. So they've got all of these people causing difficulties. And on top of that, someone, we're not sure who, if it's Hume or some of the other members, are wanting to start a female branch, since they have specialty branches now, starting with the Shimla Eclectic, which is for the Indians, for the British people living in India. Now they want to have a branch for Hindus, and they want to have a branch that is specifically for women. So we're dealing with all of this stuff now. So let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, this is letter number 31. Received at Allahabad, November 4th, 1881. To your first question, there's little to answer. Now, we don't specifically know the question.
We have no idea. He obviously, and he puts a quote, can you do anything to help on the society? Okay. They had been given the task of trying to come up with a better organization, a better plan, because they are English and their minds work differently. So since they're trying to appeal to the European mind, they're trying to come up with a better way to present these new ideas.
We may not have made it clear that these are still from Moria, since KH is still on his retreat.
Yes, we're only 1/3 of the way through the 90-day Tsongkhapa.
So yeah, November 4th, 1881 is 1/3, is a month in. Okay, wow. So Moria has his work cut out for him here.
Yeah.
To your first question, there's little to answer. Can you do anything to help on the society? He continues, do you want me to speak frankly? Well, I say no. Neither you nor the Lord Sangyas himself could help it on. And that's a reference to the Buddha himself could help it.
That's a Tibetan honorific term. When they say the Lord Sangyas, it's very with a great deal of reverence.
Mm-hmm. That's the situation as I found it, as ordered by the chiefs. Watch the papers, all except 2 or 3. The, quote, dear old lady, ridiculed when not positively libeled. Alcott attacked by all the hellhounds of the press and missions, a pamphlet headed Theosophy, printed and circulated by the Christians at Tinnevelli. October 23rd, on the day of Alcott's arrival there, with the Buddhist delegates, a pamphlet containing the Saturday Review article and another filthy, heavy attack by an American paper. And that name, Tinnevelli, is a town at the southern tip of India where Alcott arrived.
So Alcott had spent many months, I think a year or more, in Sri Lanka creating Buddhist schools, reviving Buddhism. He was doing an enormous amount of work for the Buddhist people in Sri Lanka. And now he is back in India, but not far away because he's right at the southern tip of India, which is only a short boat ride to Sri Lanka.
The C&M Gazette of Lahore hardly missing a day without having some attack and other papers reprinting them.
Now, the C&M was another newspaper owned by Mr. Radigan, who was Senate's boss in Allahabad.
We must have patience and do what we can meanwhile. My opinion is that if your Radigan, Senate's boss, is not quite a scoundrel, one of his papers having thrown and throwing daily dishonor upon an innocent woman, that's HPB, he should be the first to suggest to you the idea of translating and publishing her uncle's letters to you and herself in the Pioneer, with a few words in the leader to say that a still more substantial official proof is shortly expected from Prince Dondukov, which will settle the question as to her identity forever. But you know best. So there was a question about her identity, or?
Yeah, well, so 2 sessions ago, we were talking about the same situation. These newspapers had gotten the smart idea that they were going to cast doubt on who she was. She's nobody in Russia. She's looking for a quick buck. She's making fun of the British people and the Indian people. She's fooling them all into thinking that she's actually, somebody who was royalty. She's not, they're saying. In fact, they decided that more than likely she's a Russian spy. She doesn't like the British government, obviously, so maybe she's a Russian spy. Maybe they sent her there. And so she's trying to repair her reputation. Her uncle was a general in Russia, military general. He was a military writer, very well respected. He's well known in Russia. And so he had sent a letter to Sidit and to her to present to the newspapers saying, hey, lay off because she is who she says she is. And then this Prince Dondukov was a friend of her family in Russia because her family was royalty in Russia. And Prince Dondukov, also very well known, was sending a letter which hadn't been received yet that would also exonerate her.
Salig Ram, a truly good man, yet a devotee of another error.
Now, we don't know a whole lot about this, but apparently Sinnett and Hume were kind of casting about for other gurus to teach them. They weren't getting the satisfaction they had hoped for with these 2 adepts in India, well, they're anyone in India. And so they're looking for someone who's going to share their secrets with them. And so they're kind of checking out one by one these other gurus to receive advice and instruction from. And this seems to be one of them.
Sinnett and Hume?
Yes.
And that's current time or back when this began?
Well, this is at the current time, November 1881.
Right. Huh. So even
they're not
after
happy. Especially Hume is not happy with what they're getting, and Sinnett's like, well, yeah, I really want to learn how to do this magic stuff. And so they're still looking for someone who will reveal their secrets to them.
So Salagram is another potential, or who they believe to be an adept or a teacher.
Yeah,
who
exactly.
They think. Okay.
Exactly.
The voice of a pure, unselfish, earnest soul absorbed in misguided, misdirected mysticism. So that's Moria talking about Salagram.
Right.
Add to it a chronic disorder in that portion of the brain which responds to clear vision, and the secret is soon told. Wow.
So they know exactly who he is.
Oh my goodness.
They've investigated him.
That disorder was developed by forced visions, by hatha yoga and prolonged asceticism. This is very interesting. We know that people who force the physical practices, that's not healthy.
They cause damage.
Yeah.
And that's why if you're ever in a hurry, you're going to cause irreparable in this lifetime damage, which will cut off all further progress for this lifetime and will require more time in your next lifetime to repair and get back on track. So if you're tempted to speed things up, think 2 or 3 or 20 times about it first.
But there is a way to speed things up, and that's to become pure in your energy and your thoughts.
Let it develop naturally. If you try to force it, it's like a flower. If you force it to open up, you're going to destroy it. You have to give it the time, the nutrients, the conditions that it needs to open naturally. And it's the same with the chela. You have to do this carefully and along with nature, not forcing it.
Salagram is the chief medium, he says, and at the same time the principal magnetic factor who spreads his disease by infection unconsciously to himself, who inoculates with his vision all the other disciples. That's amazing.
So if you hook up with one of these gurus in the hope of getting something special, all you're going to get is more confusion, more disinformation. They may tell you what you want to hear. You and I both know a local guru who tells people what they want to hear. And I've not seen any of them. And in fact, apparently at this time, he is dealing with dementia. So
yeah.
we have personal information and personal experience with this.
There is one general law of vision, physical, mental, and spiritual, but there is a qualifying law that all vision must be determined by the quality of a man's spirit and soul, and also by the ability to translate diverse qualities of waves of astral light into consciousness. There is just one general law of life, but innumerable laws that qualify and determine the myriads of forms perceived and of sounds heard. There are those who are willingly and others who are unwillingly blind. Mediums belong to the former, sensitives to the latter. So that means mediums are willingly blind.
Well, it's because they purposely put themselves into trance or into a receptive state. And receptive meaning that you're giving up control to some other entity.
Right.
Sensitives do it unconsciously. They're not doing it on purpose. They're just sensitive by nature. And if they're not careful, a lot of them are not.
They don't have much control over what's going on. They're just open to it, and they should develop some control. Yes.
Yeah.
Unless properly initiated and trained concerning the spiritual insight of things and the supposed revelations made to man in all ages from Socrates down to Swedenborg and Fern, no self-tutored seer or clairaudient ever saw or heard quite correctly. Boom.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's a very assertive, very wide-reaching statement.
Yes.
Wow.
So if you're planning to get trained to become a seer by someone that you don't even know who they are or what their credentials are, you're taking your chances. Fern, by the way, was the young secretary that Hume had hired who was naturally clairvoyant.
And we haven't talked about Swedenborg yet.
No, a lot of people at the time were all agog about Swedenborg. I don't remember the exact time period when he lived, but he was one of those people who received lots of information from some kind of source that people paid attention to. The metaphysical people in the 1800s were all agog about Swedenborg.
No harm and much instruction may come to you by joining his society,
Meaning Salagram.
go ahead until he demands that which you will be obliged to refuse.
So he knows that whenever you hook up with these people, it's basically a cult. There's something that they're going to require of you, either an oath or money, or that you give up any attachment or affiliation with some other guru. He knows that something would come along. Apparently, Siddharth decided not to pursue that avenue, so this probably all came to naught as far as we know.
Learn and study, he says. You are right. They say that the one and only God of the universe was incarnated in their guru. And were such an individual to exist, he would certainly be higher than any planetary. But they are idolaters, my friend. Their guru was no initiate, only a man of extraordinary purity of life and powers of endurance. He had never consented to give up his notions of a personal God and even gods, though offered the opportunity more than once. He was born an Orthodox Hindu and died a self-reformed Hindu, something like Keshab Chandra Sen, but higher, purer, and with no ambition to taint his bright soul. Now we're talking about this Salagram's master?
Yes. Well, he's not a master. That's what they're saying.
His
guru was also not a master. They both
I was using
were
the term generally, like
following the same plan. They were both born Hindus, but they were infatuated with Christianity. So they were trying to combine Christianity with their Hinduism, and the one claiming that he was the reincarnation of God himself. A whole lot of nonsense as far as we're concerned, but that was their goal. Neither one of them succeeded in getting enough people to believe in that concept, and in the end, they ended up going back to Hinduism in a different form.
This is one more clue on the master's view on God. We haven't really emphasized that before. There is the God letter and there are a couple other things, but this is another little piece of evidence as to what the master's view about God. I mean, this is important.
So when he agrees with the fact that he was the reincarnation of God, he's essentially saying we all are. We all have divinity within us. So yes, we're an incarnation of God, but not in the way that he thought he was.
Exactly. And specifically, he said here, were such an individual to even exist, meaning
it's impossible.
Meaning God, the God of the universe. Yeah. Anyway, that's interesting. Okay, wow. All right, moving along. Many of us have regretted his self-delusion, but he was too good to be forcibly interfered with. Join them and learn, but remember your sacred promise to Kuthumi. 2 months more and he will be with us. I think of sending her to you, meaning HPB.
We're not sure whether that's HPB or a woman who was wanting to institute a women's theosophical branch.
I believe you could persuade her, for I do not wish to use my authority in this case. Signed, M.
So that's a little bit vague.
Yeah. Letter number 32. This was received, 3 days later? November 4th. No, the same day. How was that?
Yeah, they received actually 3 at least on the same day.
I wonder why he would send separate letters. Put it all in one letter. Okay.
Are you questioning Morga?
Well, maybe he was responding to separate letters.
Exactly.
As well. Okay,
yeah.
that makes sense.
Whatever.
Okay, letter number 32. The letter forwarded is from a Babu, your nausea-inspiring Bengali, for whom I ask you, for KH's sake, to conceal the feeling of queasiness that may overcome you at his sight if he comes.
Now, here he's talking about the two Hindus that were members of the branch in Allahabad, the two who were asking to be put in touch with Maurya because they had questions about Hinduism.
He's referring to them as a Babu.
Well, remember, he did, because Babu is kind of a pejorative. It means a low clerk in India, someone without a whole lot of education, but they, rather than doing manual labor, they're doing work in an office, but of a lower nature.
Sure. And what about this queasiness?
Well, obviously, he's kind of like the person, the chela that they had thought about sending him, who was filthy, and they tried to convince him carefully to dress a little nicer, and he said, you're trying to make me appear something that I am not. I'm not going to do it. So, yeah, unfortunately, he said it because he's put off by anything that doesn't conform to his ideas of cleanliness and propriety, misses out on opportunities.
Read it with attention. The lines underlined contain the germ in them of the greatest reform, the most beneficent results obtained by the Theosophical movement. So what lines underlined?
A letter that he had written. So he had written a letter, I don't remember, it may have been to Damodar. One of the letters was sent to Damodar, so that, I assume, would have been the one. Maurya apparently underlined some things in it and then sent it on to Sinnett.
So the letter forwarded is from a Babu with underlined lines. So there must have been a letter with this letter.
Right, because 2 sessions ago we mentioned that one of those two theosophists in Allahabad had written a letter, and the other one one wrote a letter to Damodar and one wrote a letter to Sinnett himself. Okay. So this must be the one sent to Damodar.
If our friend of Shimla were less cantankerous, I might have tried to influence him to draft out special rules and a distinct pledge with applications and obligations for the Zenana women of India.
Now, the friend of Shimla is Hume.
Oh, okay.
So he's saying, if he wasn't so cantankerous, I might have asked him if he would be willing to organize some kind of a proposal for a branch for the women. Now, Zenana is a Hindi word that means basically the same as harim. It's the women's section of a house. You know, in a mansion, they have a women's section where they peer out between Persian blinds, or in the past, not anymore, where they at this point in India, polygamy was still practiced in some areas of India and in some parts of some forms of Hinduism. It wasn't, I think, until around 1956 that they entirely made it illegal in India.
Profit by the suggestion and see whether you can prevail upon him to do so. Write to him without delay to Bombay to come and meet the old woman at your house, and then pass him on to his countryman and fellow member, the Prayag Babu.
So that's why I think it's another woman besides HPB, and we'll see. He'll say something else later. So apparently there was a specific woman who had taken this upon her to try to make it happen.
Then telegraph to her in Meerut to come using my name, otherwise she will not. I already answered him in her name. Do not feel surprised, because for everything I do, I have a reason, as you may learn some years hence.
So again, the Mahatmas are very secretive, and they have to be.
And they're purposeful. They're intentional, too.
Yes, and they know exactly what they're doing, but they don't reveal all of their intentions or motives or very much at all. And, you know, those who are chelas or wannabe chelas get very annoyed at that, but it's the way it has to be. So if you're annoyed by that, go find a different guru. But if you're wanting to attract the attention of the only real gurus, then you just have to realize that and realize that they do have their reasons for it.
And why should you be so anxious to see my chits to other people? Have you not sufficient trouble to make out my letters addressed to yourself? Signed, M.
What's a chit?
Chats? Talking?
No, it's a Hindi word. It comes, there's a Hindi word, chitti, which means just like a freckle or a spot or a mark or just like a little bit of something. So it's I don't know what it would be in English, but it's just a little short something that leaves a mark. But the British people picked up on it and started using as a note or a memo, a little brief statement of some sort.
Letter number 33.
So anyway, he was saying, why are you being so nosy? Why do you want to know what I'm writing to other people? Don't you have enough trouble reading my hand scratching? Because K.H., when he wrote, was very meticulous, or relatively so. We can still make out his handwriting pretty well. But Moria's is just like sloppy. No other word.
All right, that's the end of letter 32, so now letter 33. It's dated the same day, November 4th, 1881. This is a little bit longer. Your illustrious friend did not mean to be satirical, whatever other construction might be put on his words. Your illustrations...
So we don't know if it was Sinnett or Hume or someone else who used both of these terms with relation to Moria. Illustrious is something that Moria even called himself sometimes in jest. But he also used the term Highness, Your Highness. Now, technically, I suppose Moria was entitled to use something like that because he was royalty. He was part of some royal family in Rajput in India. I guess it's Rajputana, but he was a Rajput prince. But he never said anything about that, never required anybody to call him Your Highness or anything of that nature.
Your illustrious friend was simply feeling sad at the thought of the great disappointment K.H. is sure to experience when he returns among us. The first glance back at the work so close to his heart will show him such samples of mutual feeling exchanged as the two herein enclosed.
And I assume that means the two letters.
Okay. The undignified, bitter, sarcastic tone of one will give him as little cause to rejoice as the undignified, foolish, and childish tone of the other.
Actually, the one was from the Babu, and the other letter that he was sending him was from HPB. She had written, in response to one of these newspaper articles, a letter to send to them, and she was in a rage and didn't think through it very clearly in it. So that's describe it again. What is it?
Undignified, bitter, sarcastic tone of one, and undignified, foolish, and childish tone of the other.
Yeah, exactly.
I would have left the subject untouched had you not so misunderstood the feeling expressed in my last letter. It is better that I should be frank with you. The term highness, to which I am not in the least entitled, is far more suggestive of satire than anything I have hitherto said. Yet as no epithet will hang to the shirt collar of a Tibetan, I pay no heed, advising you to do the same, and see no satire where none is meant, and which is but frankness in speech and the correct definition of the general state of your feelings toward the natives.
So we don't know all of the details of that. It's just to give you an insight into his own temperament Mahatmas don't care about honorific titles or being called illustrious or your highness or anything else. They're here to work, to serve humanity, and that's the only thing they care about.
You will certainly have trouble with her, HPB, about the, quote, female branch. Her scorn for the sex has no bounds. For the female race?
Yeah.
For the female gender? Wow.
Yeah.
And she can hardly be persuaded that any good can ever come from that quarter. I will be frank with you again. Neither I nor any of us would consent to become the founders, let alone the conductors of a female branch. We have enough with our Anis?
Adis. Those are the female monks, or a female, what are they called? The nuns in Buddhism.
Mm-hmm. Yet we confess that a great good may result from such a movement. The females having such an influence over their children and the men in the houses, and you being such an old and experienced hand in that direction could, with Mr. Hume's help, be of immense use from KH from within the area of whose, quote, lovable nature, with the exception of his sister, females were always excluded and love for his country and humanity reigned alone. He knows nothing of the creatures you do. He always felt the need of enrolling women, yet would never meddle with them.
He's talking to Sid. He said you could do something to help your friend KH.
Oh, he's talking about KH being him.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
because
okay.
he's saying KH would probably be in agreement with this. He's much more heart-centered than I am. I'm stern and no nonsense.
Okay.
But he is. He has a real kindness and empathy for everybody.
Even though he says neither I nor any of us would consent to become the founders, he is saying KH would.
He's saying that if you manage to come up with something along that line, he might be in agreement with it. He just wouldn't get involved with it.
Okay. Moving along. On the other hand, we claim to know more of the secret cause of events than you men of the world do. I say then that it is the vilification and abuse of the founders, the general misconception of the aims and objects of the Theosophical Society that paralyzes its progress, nothing else. There's no lack of preciseness in these objects when they are properly explained.
So he's talking about the problems that are coming up from outside sources, attacking the Theosophical Society. He's basically saying it's no one's fault within the society. Mm-hmm. The impetus is coming directly from these angry people. And no other cause. It isn't because of karma that someone within the society has created.
I'm sorry to find you comparing theosophy to a painted house on the stage, whereas in the hands of true philanthropists and theosophists, it might become as strong as an impenetrable fort. The situation is this. Men who join the society with the one selfish object of reaching power, making occult science their only or chief aim, may as well not join it. They are doomed to disappointment. This concept keeps coming up over and over and over again.
They emphasize it, and yet, no matter how many times they emphasize it, these two people seem not to grasp it.
I mean, people today want the magic and the clairvoyant aspects rather than brotherhood of humanity.
So don't be as dumb as these two guys are.
It is because they preach too much the brothers and too little the concept of brotherhood that they fail. That's interesting because they're focusing on the masters. They want to know the secrets of magic.
Yeah, it's like, come on, tell us if we worship you, will that, if we tell you how great you are, it's like no.
How many times must we repeat that he who joins the society with the sole object of coming into contact with us, or assuring himself of our powers and existence, is pursuing a mirage?
Yeah, it's all for naught. It ain't going to happen.
Because no one that joins the society is going to come in contact with them.
No.
Yeah, so interesting.
It's really simple.
It is.
People don't want simple. They don't want simple. They want drama. They want
It just but it does
phenomena.
beg the question, though. Like, I'm trying to ask this from a neutral perspective. Why are there not more direct teachings from them? If they,
This is why. This is why, because they can't find very many people who actually want that.
well, why don't they write a book and make it like a book and put it out without a person having?
How about you write it?
That'd be good too.
No,
Nobody
the
would
need
believe
is
it's from a
there.
master,
It
though.
is absolutely there. They've tried various methods for 140 years, and so far, none of them have had great success. Each one has had some success. And now, who knows whether it's this time or whether it's 100 years from now, but the time will come when somebody will make this more concise and will be able to be the conduit between them and the sincere aspirants.
I do understand the reasons that they need a proper student to communicate with. What if a book appeared on the shelves of stores without an author's name? I mean, with all the wisdom of the world, like what would the harm in that be? If they put all the information they want humanity.
Well, first they have to find the right person to write it.
Well, I'm just saying, what if it appeared on the shelves with no one writing it? Just get the information out somehow, because I know they can't find a person right now.
It's probably not going to end up as a book. It's probably going to end up as information on the internet. And those people who are sincere seekers will find it. They will be connected with that.
Okay, it's interesting that.
We're in a different age. We don't have to have a book now.
Well, I picked that medium, but a new website that becomes viral with no author because the masters did it.
And in fact, it should not become viral. That's even better, because that's going to attract all of the trolls and all of the people who are angered because it doesn't reflect their own opinions. So it draws out, just like what they're doing now, drew out all of the hellhounds all over the world, in India, in England. All of these people are now attacking the messenger and the message. And so that's the experience. They're gaining experience. They're trying to figure out how to teach people, and they're finding all of the bad experiences that happen, the things to avoid in the future.
The masters are learning, you're
Yes,
saying.
they're learning just as
So
we are.
I guess we're answering my own question as we're talking. The reason, first of all, we're not ready for all the information to be disseminated, obviously, and secondly, it would cause more problems than it would help. And
Exactly. Some of the worst people, remember Stanton Moses was a friend of theirs. HPB loved this man, and he became one of her bitterest and most effective enemies at causing trouble for her.
Unfortunate. I say again, then, it is he alone who has the love of humanity at heart that is capable of grasping thoroughly the idea of a regenerating practical brotherhood, who is entitled to the possession of our secrets. Well, that's it right there. We have to be thoroughly one with the idea of practical. I love that it says practical brotherhood, not just the concept of it. Living like that. Living
Exactly.
like.
So
Yes.
people say, "Oh yeah, I believe in brotherhood."
Yeah, you say that.
BS.
You
If
say
you
that.
have one single person that you say, "Oh, I hate that person,"
Mm-hmm.
then you are not. You actually do not believe in brotherhood.
Or let me see your tax return, and did you write something off that you shouldn't have?
Exactly,
you?
because
'Cause
purity
Right.
is.
Because if you did, you're not treating others like yourself. You think
Right.
the government is out to get you. You're trying to hide something. I know that's a poor example, but
No, it's not. It's an excellent example. Either you believe it or you do not.
Right.
And your actions
Right.
are what is going to tell on you.
and he just said right there, that's the key to our secrets. What?
Yeah.
That statement alone is a mic drop moment.
Yeah. So
If
don't
you-
tell me that you believe in brotherhood if your actions speak otherwise.
And if you want to know how to do real magic, this is how to do it.
Yep.
I love it. I love it so much. He alone, such a man, will never misuse his powers because he's pure, as there will be no fear that he should turn them into selfish ends. turn them to selfish ends. A man who doesn't place the good of mankind above his own good is not worthy of becoming our chela. I love how direct he is here. Mm-hmm. He is not worthy of becoming higher in knowledge than his neighbor. If he craves phenomena, let him be satisfied with the pranks of spiritualism. Oh my gosh, the pranks of spiritualism. Whew!
Now, this next part is really eloquent.
Okay, here we go. There was a time when, from the sea to sea, from the mountains and deserts of the north to the grand woods and hills of Ceylon, there was but one faith, one rallying cry to save humanity from the miseries of ignorance in the name of Him who first taught the solidarity of all men. How is it now? Where is the grandeur of our people and of the one truth? These, you may say, are beautiful visions which were once realities on earth, but have flitted away like the light of a summer's evening. Yes, and now we are in the midst of a conflicting people, of an obstinate, ignorant people seeking to know the truth, yet not able to find it. For each seeks it only for his own private benefit and gratification, without giving one thought to the others. Will they never see the true meaning and explanation of that great wreck and desolation which has come to our land and threatens all lands, yours first of all? It is selfishness and exclusiveness that killed ours, and it is selfishness and exclusiveness that will kill yours, which has, in addition, some other defects which I will not name. The world has clouded the light of true knowledge, and selfishness will not allow its resurrection. Wow.
So, yeah, the opportunity is there for the individual, and they are very few and far between, the individuals who can perceive it and understand why the rest of the world is not ready for it. There will never be a philosophy or religion that is widespread, that a large section of humanity will grasp onto. Not in our time. It's in the far distant future. Right now, the best they can hope for is that a few individuals here and there who grasp the concept and secretly, carefully teach other people. It's not going to be openly. It's going to be in very small groups of people that it happens.
Until it's wide-reaching.
Until the world is ready. And right now, it is not anywhere close to being ready.
And that would be in the sixth root race.
We're in the
Subrace.
depths of materialism. Mm-hmm. It has a stranglehold on humanity right now, and it has gotten far worse in the last 140 years than they probably could ever have imagined. So it has gotten nothing but worse. The world itself is not worse. Materialism has got much more of a grasp on people. Materialism and spirituality are antithetical. You can't have both of them coexisting within a person.
There's one more paragraph in this letter number 33. You may see things in a false light, but you do not concentrate all the light in yourself, as some do, and that's one superior quality you possess over other Europeans we know. Your affection for KH is sincere and warm, and that is your redeeming quality in my eyes. Why should you then await my reply with any nervousness at all? Whatever happens, we too will always remain your friends, as we do not blame sincerity.
So, despite all of his bluster, he's still a sweet, kind individual. Yes. And the two of them, Moria and KH, are just amazing in the love they have for each other and the way they work as one single unit. So he says, your affection for KH is sincere and warm, and that is your redeeming quality in my eyes. So despite all of your other problems and lack of perception, that alone is going to mean that we will never give up on you. You're always going to be our friend.
And he signs it M. And that was the end of letter number 33. Letter number 34, dated just December of 1881.
Yeah, that we're not sure of what date.
Okay. If my advice is requested, then first of all, the real and true situation has to be defined. My, quote, arhat, vows are specific, and I can neither seek revenge nor help others to obtain it. Ooh.
All right, now at each stage, there are different vows required of the chela.
Why are we changing the term to arhat now? What is, they're similar terms, chela and arhat, but is there any
arhat is a... He's using it as in the similar to adept.
Okay.
So again, don't get hung up on it because they're used differently in different places. So just keep in mind that at each stage, as a potential chela, one who is in probation, nothing is required. You don't have to promise anything. They definitely don't promise anything. But if you're an accepted chela, then they are going to require a certain vow from that chela. Right. And in return, they make certain promises to that chela. Each time you go one more step, there are more vows, there are more vows on their part in response. So it gets tighter and tighter and tighter.
I can help her, HPB, with cash only when I know that not a penny will be spent for any unholy purpose, and revenge is unholy.
Now, I think this has to do with the fact that she was complaining about not having enough money to travel.
Right, but do you think she was requesting this or one of the Englishmen?
They don't necessarily pay their chelas for doing stuff.
Right.
Most of the time, they're on their own to figure out how to make money,
right,
and to use that for helping humanity.
Right.
So it's not like a big organization where you have expenses and they just reimburse you for it. You're pretty much on your own most of the time. They do help once in a while. So I'm assuming she may have said, you're asking me to go all these places. Can you at least help me out a little bit here? And he's saying, because of my vows, if she uses 1 penny that I give her to seek revenge against one of these people, then the karma is on me. And he said, I'm not willing to do that.
And for our viewers, we're not speaking of the Theosophical Society. We're speaking about these masters,
right,
Morya and KH. The TS has a completely different structuring than what we're talking about here. This is completely between KH and the student, Morya and the student. Yeah. This is very interesting, though. But we have defense, and she has a right to it. And by defense, he probably means. He means means.
No, it means in the newspapers. He's going to outline it.
Okay. Defense and full vindication she must have, and that is why I telegraphed to offer options before proceeding to file a lawsuit.
So we're already talking about lawsuits.
Wow.
They have defamed her. There is no question about it. They've told lies about her and published them in newspapers. So he's saying, she has a right to her defense.
I mean, that's still happening today.
If it has to be a lawsuit.
Mm-hmm. To demand a retraction and threaten with a lawsuit, she has a right, and she can also begin proceedings, for he will retract. For that, and we don't know who he is.
Well, whoever published them, it could be Ratigan, and it may be some other newspaper editor.
Okay. For that reason, I have stressed the necessity of an article touching upon no other subject but that of the alleged debt.
I don't know what is meant by that.
Maybe it's what she's incurring, debt she's incurring by traveling around. Maybe. This alone will prove sufficient to frighten the defamer, for it will reveal him before the public as a slanderer and show to himself that he was in the wrong box. This mistake is due to the very illegible and ugly handwriting of McAuliffe, a calligrapher and scribe of my kind.
Meaning that he's sloppy in his writing.
That's funny. Who sent the information to the statesman,
Okay, so that's the newspaper that they're thinking of suing.
It's called The Statesman.
Right. So
okay.
this McAuliffe sent a letter defaming her, and they published it. And so he's saying that it was lucky that he was so sloppy in his handwriting because that may help us.
I think it's interesting to point out the fact that the masters are, although we would consider them to be enlightened humans. They have graduated from the school or near graduation from the school of life. They're able to engage in a legal lawsuit for the right reasons.
Right.
For the right reason. And this is important because sometimes we get pushback from students who say, you want me to be peaceful all the time. Well, do you want me to be a doormat too and let people walk all over me? Well, no, that's not what we're saying. File your lawsuit, but do it like this while you do it. File your lawsuit in a state of Zen.
And they're learning lessons too, because this is completely outside their realm of expertise. So they're gaining some new experience. A lot of it will not go the way they expect it to. So we all learn, including the Mahatmas.
We can equate this to all of the teachings that we talk about from Eckhart Tolle and in our book about how to handle problems in life. We don't react to them. We take a breath and we evaluate, and then we act. We act. And if we need to act, we act.
And always the key is we don't act with emotion.
Exactly.
It's from a higher point of view, and it's out of a sense of justice and nothing else.
Sure. This was a lucky mistake, the fact that he had bad handwriting, right? For on that maybe built the whole vindication if you act wisely. But the most has to be made of it now, or you will lose the opportunity. So if you are willing once more to take my advice, since you have fired the first shot in the Pioneer, find the accounts in the Theosophist, and on that data and the Tuesday article, write a nice pungent letter for her signed with her name and Alcott's. This can be published first in the Pioneer, or, if you object to it, in some other paper, but at all events, they will have to print it in the form of a circular letter and send it to every paper in the land. Demand retraction from the Statesman and threaten with a lawsuit. If you do that, I promise success. Now, he's suggesting to sign their names. I wonder how that's able to be done ethically.
Because they allowed it.
Okay.
They will give
Of course
permission.
they would allow, but still, okay.
So
okay.
he can sign it.
Okay.
You can act as an attorney for someone else.
Okay, as long as they allow it, sure.
So,
okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So he says, I promise success.
When he's talking about a circular letter, that's a term they used in those days that we would say a press release. So he's saying, send a bunch of letters that are exactly the same to different newspapers, telling them that you're allowed to share this with other newspapers. Anybody else can retweet this letter.
Retweet it. I love it. The Odessa old lady, Nadezhda.
Now, this is HPB's beloved aunt in Odessa.
Okay.
The one that, and it turns out it wasn't KH that appeared to her. Keep reading.
Nadezhda is quite anxious for your autograph. That of, quote, a great and celebrated writer, she says. She was very reluctant to part with your letter to the general, but had to send you proof of her own identity. Tell her that I, the Kosyain, she called me her niece's Kosyain, as I went to see her thrice, gossiped the thing to you, advising you to write to her, furnishing her thus with your autograph. Also, send back through HPB her portraits, as soon as you have shown them to your lady, for she at Odessa is very anxious to have them back, especially the young face. That's her, as I knew her first, the lovely maiden.
All right, so Kosyain is actually a Russian word, which means boss or supervisor. So her aunt referred to him as HPB's boss. And Moria liked that. He thought that was
nice.
Pretty sweet.
The lovely maiden.
But he visited her thrice, 3 times. So I'm assuming he was the one who appeared when he delivered the letter in 1870, telling them that HPB was safe and not to worry. She would be back in, 18 moons?
So it might have been Moria.
So
Wow.
it was apparently Moria because that, and he apparently visited 2 other times that I have no idea what those were.
Is this a time when we want to show them?
Yes. So here's the photo that HPB's aunt sent to Senate to post, part of the proving that she is who she says she is and not an imposter. So the lovely maiden. Now, Moria says this is what she looked like when I first met her, meaning in 1851, when he was in London and she met him at Hyde Park. So the lovely maiden.
I'm a little busy just now, but will furnish you with an explanatory appendix as soon as I have some leisure, say in 2 or 3 days. The illustrious will look to all that needs watching. That's himself, right?
Yes.
Okay. What about Mr. Hume's superb address? Can't you have it ready for your January number?
Now, this is, I believe, regarding the Theosophist, an article for the Theosophist.
Okay. Likewise, with your editorial answer to the Spiritualist's editorial, my object is twofold: to develop your metaphysical intuitions and to help the Theosophist, which is capitalized as the name of the publication, by infusing into it a few drops of real literary good blood. Your 3 articles are certainly praiseworthy, the points well taken, and as far as I can judge, calculated to grab the attention of every scholar and metaphysician. Later, you will learn more about creation. Whoa.
Yeah, so remember they had been talking about cosmology in previously, and now he's going to teach him, not right now, but he says later you will learn more about creation. And speaking of creation.
Meanwhile, I will have to create my dinner. He would scarcely like it, I'm afraid.
Again, his sense of humor. We're going to talk about creation of the world, but in the meantime, I need to create my dinner, and you definitely wouldn't like it.
This sounds like the things you...
some kind of legumes and vegetables, I'm guessing, and some
rice,
chapati or something.
This sounds like the way you would speak. You and Rhonda, maybe. Rhonda would say something like that. But he says that his object is twofold: to help Sinnett develop his metaphysical intuitions.
Right. And what was the rest?
And to help the Theosophist by infusing it, of course, with real information. But how does that help Sinnett develop his metaphysical intuitions? Just
they're always testing potential chelas by, like we said, planting ideas near them to see if they pick up on them. If they're completely clueless, they're probably not going to progress very quickly. They're trying to get us to make the effort to be more perceptive and to capture subtle clues.
And then he signs it M. And is that a PS under the
That's
M?
a PS.
Okay. Your young friend, the disinherited, is on his legs again. That's the other master, Djwal Khul.
Djwal Khul,
But
yes.
he's not considered a master.
I don't know if he was an adept or not at this point, but he was a very high chela.
We haven't heard from him in a while. He's on his legs again. Would you really like him to write to you? If so, you'd better propose in the Pioneer the advisability of coming to terms with China with regard to establishing regular postal service between Allahabad and Shigatse.
I didn't realize that even in 1881, China would have to be involved in any kind of postal service between Tibet and India. But apparently they would have to be involved in that.
Interesting.
So, yeah, and is on his legs again. Here's what happened. The disinherited, DK, was traveling somewhere by foot up in the mountains of Tibet and wasn't paying attention. He was apparently with another chela, and he lost his footing.
Oh, no.
And without the intervention of this, he did fall, but without the intervention of this other chela, he would have probably been killed. And
Wow.
they explained that sometimes the red caps, the brothers of the shadows, would place a rag or a piece of cloth that had been impregnated with magnetism in strategic spots. And if one of these chelas stepped on it, it would be like an electric shock, and it would cause them to possibly be killed.
Oh my gosh.
And apparently that's what happened. So he did fall. He was seriously injured and was laid up for several weeks. But he's saying he is back on his legs again, and he would like to correspond with you if you're willing. So very cool stuff. All right, that will wrap it up for today. And good stuff, and we will see you in session 22.
Namaste.